It is proper, visceral, muscular cinema. It's a really, really terrific film.
It reminded me of like The Dirty Dozen, Papillon, and Midnight Express all at the same time, like all into one fucking movie. It was fantastic.
Sorcerer is, to me, one of the greatest movies ever made.
Stuff with that truck on the bridge is pretty remarkable film. And the ending also a different ending, but similarly divisive.
Hi, welcome to the Bencher Movie Club. I'm Charlie, and today I'm going to be talking about the 1977 classic that's not nearly spoken enough about, and that's Sorcerer, directed by William Friedkin. Yes, the man who previously, of course, directed French Connection and Exorcist, two great films, particularly Exorcist, which I love. And then I saw this film for the first time about 6 months ago, and I just thought, wow, it's purely by chance I came across it. And it was funny enough, it was the poster for the film that dragged me in. The imagery on the poster, taken of course from one of the best parts of the film as well, one of the most intense parts, which is saying something because the whole film's intense.
It's risky moving one of those cases 10 feet. That fire is over 200 miles away.
If it were up there, could you use it?
I suppose we could boom load it a little bit at a time, yes? How the hell are you going to get it up?
It's not your problem. We'll get it up there.
The film stars Roy Scheider, who's, of course, from French Connection and most famously Jaws, which is one of my favourite films. Bruno Kramer, who's in White Wedding and most famous for the Octopus TV series. Francisco Rebel, who's in Veridiana, Tie Me Up and Tie Me Down. Amidou, who's in Escape to Victory spy game. He plays Qasim, the Palestinian refugee, young guy. And Raymond Bieri, who's in Badlands. What I like about the cast in particular is the only person I knew was Roy Scheider, and even he was never really an A-lister name. He nearly was after the back of Jaws. I think the reason he got this job is because of the back of Jaws. Before him, they wanted Steve McQueen, among others, but Steve McQueen was signed on to do it, or was almost as good as, but then he found out it was going to be shot in Dominican Republic, and he was going to be there for like 3 months. Steve McQueen had just got married to Ali McGraw from Love Story, and he wanted the film to be shot in America to spend more time with her. And then alternatively, he was saying to William Friedkin, oh, can my wife work on the film? Can she do this, or can she do various other things? And Friedkin said,
no, fuck off. Can't be sidetracked with
things like that. Yeah, so eventually Steve McQueen wasn't able to do it. The role was offered to Robert Mitchum, Clint Eastwood, Jack Nicholson, and none of them fancied working abroad for such a long shoot. And it actually ended up being longer than what they'd planned anyway. So the film follows these 4 distant people from around the world. They've each got one reason or another. Basically, they're on the run in their own countries, and they end up in this South American village. So what Friedkin decided to do is give you some backstory on all 4 of the, well, yeah, 4 of the 4 main characters. So at least then you got to see a little bit of build up. He has said that maybe he overcooked the beginning. I don't think so, because I think it works well. It's by today's standards, you wouldn't call it overcooked. It'd be underplayed, if anything. He takes enough time and respect for each segment, whether it's the Palestinians setting off the bomb in Israel, which of course is still topical to this day, and this film was shot back in '76. And then, of course, you got the Frenchman, he's his predicament is interesting because he's obviously in a he's the one who's lost the most in a way. He had the best life out of all of them. Managed to ingrace himself into this higher echelon of French society, and he's obviously been fraudulent to make himself a bit of money. He can see he's getting found out. He keeps putting little suggestions. Oh no, I'll sort it out later. I'll sort it out later, which is fantastic. I love how all the different stories on why they were there are so different, with different motivations. Whether it's like if it's a freedom fighter, someone fighting for what they believe in, or if it's someone who's just after money. Not necessarily saying either one is justified, but what I like about William Friedkin is he doesn't really believe in the good and evil. He just believes in people. He thinks everyone is capable of doing good and doing bad, and he never wanted to linchpin any of the characters as the hero. So it worked in his favour that Steve McQueen wasn't able to do the main part, because especially now looking here, loads of people, unless you've seen Jaws or French Connection, probably won't know who Roy Scheider is, and that way he disappears into the main four. So then you don't think, oh, he's gonna last to the end. You think, well, any one of them can go literally at any point. William Friedkin originally envisioned doing this film as like a low budget for a couple of million, while he was working on The Devil's Triangle, which was after the success of Exorcist. He was doing something else paranormal or out there. It was going to be like a UFO based type film set in the Bermuda Triangle with like Marlon Brando. But then Steven Spielberg made Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So then he felt, I don't really want to tell this story now. It's kind of been told. Even if it ain't his exact voice, it's like someone's told you a joke. Well, I don't want to tell it again because they've told you it. It's not as good now. Approximately 50 people had to leave the production for either injury, gangrene, food poisoning, or malaria. Friedkin himself lost 50 pounds, that's 23 kilograms, and was stricken with malaria. It's a very grueling production, and you see it on screen. So much like you'd compare it to, say, Apocalypse Now, which is a fitting thing to say because William Friedkin actually saw Francis Ford Coppola as his main rival in what he wants to do. So obviously they have very similar shooting styles. You can almost mix their films up, but they've still got their own distinct voice in them. I particularly like the way William Friedkin always shoots as real as possible. Like it's been in Jerusalem, it's shot in Jerusalem. Obviously Paris was quite easy, although Paris looked really beautiful back then, back in 1976. It's a dump now, but back then it looked really nice, and you think, wow. The cars, I loved all the style of back then. It's a perfect snapshot of the 70s as well, which works well in its favour since it is a 70s film.
I have a couple of minutes. For you, they'll hold the plane.
May I have this dance?
I think it's a shame that it came out the same time as Star Wars, because obviously back then, if you could only go to the cinema once, the film that everyone was talking about at the time was Star Wars. I'm not saying Star Wars was a better film, because I'm not sure if it is. They're just different, chalk and cheese. This has many things over Star Wars, and it's obviously a lot more serious and grounded in realism. I know where it's a remake, but what I like is that Friedkin has done a completely different film. He just took the idea of the original novel rather than copy the original film, The Wages of Fear. And this way, he's done different characters, different outcome even. Some people criticise the title, which I don't get. I like the title. I don't think you can't blame the title for the poor attendance, poor viewings. I like that it is such an isolated part of the film, because Sorcerer is the name of one of the 2 trucks that are making this journey. The journey being the 4 guys carrying nitroglycerin 200 miles to seal up an oil well. I like how the film has shown the destruction of their own individual lives, then being put through what is like purgatory, this tiny little South American town, and it's just living hell on earth, and you can see how drained they look, and then they're put on a test. It's something you could take out of Dante's Inferno, them going through all these different stages of afterlife, and then the big question, where will they go, heaven or hell? And you've got the 4 characters, and again with Roy Scheider, not a household name to me. It's certainly one an A-lister. You didn't know who to put your money on, and they was all made sympathetic as well as apathetic. The other truck was called Lazarus, which was after, of course, the I don't know how religious you are, but in the Bible, Lazarus, I think, was he died, and Jesus brought him back to life like 4 days. Like his sister, I think, wrote to Jesus, said, "Oh, Jesus, come, my brother Lazarus, he's sick. He ain't gonna make it. Can you heal him?" And Jesus was like, "Yeah. In a bit, I will." And then I don't know. I think he forgot, and then he said, "Look, don't worry. Believe in me, and I'll bring him back to life." And she's like, "Yeah, all right, yeah, I believe in you." So then he goes and brings Lazarus back to life. Anyway, so yeah, the truck was named after Lazarus, who, as I mentioned, was brought back to life by Jesus. Jesus, now recognised as the holy saint of procrastination, apparently. So that was the first name he actually came up with for the truck. And Sorcerer, which they obviously ended up changing to the title of the film, it took him a while to think of. He was a bit stumped, and then he was actually listening to Miles Davis, his album Sorcerer, and it just clicked. He thought, that's the name I want to use. It doesn't say it doesn't give anything away from the film, but it's almost like it's hiding in plain sight. You might wonder for a brief moment, I wonder why it's called Sorcerer. Is there any sort of magic in it and stuff? And then almost immediately you're brought into reality of what kind of film this is. It's deeply steeped in reality, and it's like snapshots of the worst places on earth thrown together, distant people from these places, and force them to work together. And this rocky relationships between them, it's all very believable. It's incredibly well acted. I couldn't possibly pick a weak link because I don't think there is one. They all do fantastic for the parts that they're playing. William Friedkin attempted to complete the film without relying on dialogue, and he was famously quoted as saying, "Every film is actually 3 films: the film you conceive, the film you shoot, and the film that emerges from editing." And having done a little bit of making films myself, I can attest to that, because I always think it's for the better, but you have this idea and you think, yes, that's exactly how I want to make my film. Then when you're shooting it, there will always be problems. I can only imagine the kind of, well, I can do the modern imagine. I can look it up and do my research. But the problems that were on this film, compared to, say, the problems that on one of the films the film I was making, it was hottest day of the year, all of a sudden hailstones started coming down. If you're English, you believe this, because that's what our weather's like. It's totally unpredictable. There's nothing you can predict about it. And that was a minute problem compared to this, where they had like 50 plus people having to leave because of malaria. I think the real lead in this is the forest. It's the jungle, because it's looming over them, the 4 characters, so much so it's almost like they're trying to peek through its fingers. It's like it's like a cat toying with a couple, like 4 little insects, and at any point it could just stamp them out. The jungle itself is just the most menacing place, especially in this film. We probably shouldn't live in the southern hemisphere or anyway, because it's just filled with poison and dangerous environments and, you know, animals and dangerous sea creatures and spiders as big as your face. And then it's like, oh yeah, it bites a little bit, you might die. Yeah, I don't want that. I like living in England, where there's, you know, nothing can hurt you. It's like a old people's home, and I like it. Anyway, it's great how towards the end of the film, especially when there is, again, there's spoilers in this. If you're going to watch the film, if you've been tempted into it, stop now, because I'm giving away the ending now. It's only Roy Scheider's character left, the American gangster who's on the run. He has the dead body of one of the other 4 men, and he can just hear the man laughing over and over again. And he's going in. Roy Scheider's character is clearly going insane. He's replaying back on the events of his life.
Get a train down to Baltimore. Go to Pier 47.
Where am I going? Where am I going?
Lisa needs braces.
Dental plan.
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 Lisa needs braces.
And what's great is the location they use, which is this rocky desert, which is sort of looks like something from another planet. It looks like it could be from like the old 60s Star Trek, and the lighting where it's like dusk and the lights that they use on it, it just looks otherworldly, and it mirrors his the way he's encroaching insanity, where he's talking to himself, hearing the constant laughing. And then to top it all, that's where the lorry breaks down just 2 miles away from his destination. So, of course, then he has to carry the crate of nitroglycerin for those last 2 miles. And when you see him carrying the crate, it's like his death is almost foreshadowed, because when you look at him, with the darkness behind him and how pale and weak he looks, he just looks like a skeleton. It looks like a skeleton carrying his own coffin, which is quite fitting because there's, of course, the ambiguous ending. The film ends, he's completed the task, he's the only man to survive, and he decides he wants to dance with this woman who is a bit weird looking and oldish. And while he's dancing, then, of course, we get the pan out and you see a taxi pull up with 2 men from earlier in the film, the men who've been sent to kill Roy Scheider. They walk into the place and it's expertly timed that the camera is far enough away that you can't exactly hear everything that's going on. And just in case you think you hear a faint noise, there's a truck full of soldiers going over some bumps and it's getting mixed up. It's so, the sound editing in particular and that end piece is perfect. It's pitch, and it had to be pitch perfect to keep the ambiguity, because otherwise Friedkin would have had to, you'd have to hear gunshots or shouting. And in this scenario, you can believe that the distance and the other sounds that's going on is just enough that you're questioning your own hearing. Is he dead? Is Roy Scheider dead? Spoiler alert. Yes, apparently, according to William Friedkin, he was interviewed years later and he said, yes, they caught up with him and they killed him, which would mean that the 4 characters are dead. However, I still like to keep of it. I'll ignore what Friedkin says because I'm just taking the art on the art's sake, and you don't see exactly what happens. So I like to believe that it's dependent upon your day. It's almost like a Rorschach for your head. Depending on the mood you're in, you think, yeah, he got away. He managed to run off through the back, run for his life, but he survived to this day. Or if you're sort of really feeling down at it, you can think, nah, they killed him. You know, beat shit out of him, mugged him off. So that's how I prefer to keep it, Friedkin. I know you're dead, but you know, you can hear me. So
Met my wife when I first came to Paris from Bretagne. The day she gave me this was the last day I saw her. It's 5 minutes before 9 in Paris.
Fire, you son of a...
Sorcerer currently holds a rating of 7.7 on IMDb, and on Rotten Tomatoes it's got a fresh rating 84% by the critics and 83% by the audience. So the critics and audience agree it's a really good film because it's in the 80s. I mean, come on. I can see how many sensibilities for watching film might not be able to appreciate a film like this. It's such a quintessentially 70s type film, even way down to the soundtrack as well. Tangerine Dream, who they were actually discovered because Friedkin was doing a press tour for Exorcist in Berlin, and he heard about this band playing in the church at midnight in the dark, and he went and see them or listened to them, and it was Tangerine Dream. And afterwards he spoke to him and said, I want to keep using mine for making a score, and he used them for this. And the score, which is fantastic, is such a it is 70s obviously, but it's something that you would hear even more so in years to come in the 80s. You'd have it in like even from like the very late 70s, early 80s horror to just the sci-fi films of their time, or any kind of thriller like Hitcher or the such. The budget was $22 million, and in the box office it only made $9 million. This is obviously one culprit: Star Wars. I don't mean that. No, I like Star Wars. I love Star Wars. I think it's one of those films I watched growing up. Everyone did, and it was just such a fantastic escape from reality. However, Sorcerer is a wake-up call. It's the opposite. It's not an escape from reality. It's showing you humankind, environment, situation, all in their worst possible senses, and it's showing a mirror on the worst case of society. You can't look at it and think, oh, what a great piece of fiction. You can look at it and think, those kind of scenarios happen every single day. People die at a drop of a hat, and the more dangerous your environment, the more likely it's going to happen. Yeah, so that was Sorcerer. If for some reason you've listened to this whole thing and you haven't seen it yet, sorry, you were warned. Maybe you was driving and you couldn't stop it. Oh well. Watch it anyway. It's, even though I've revealed some little aspects of it, you probably forget that once you're in there anyway. and you'll be watching the film and thinking, "Oh, this is a good film. I'm sure someone told me about this." And then afterwards, you go, "Oh yeah, him told me." So yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for getting this far. Please make sure you like and subscribe and share, because otherwise no one else will hear about us. It's only you three that we're relying on, the free subscribers. You've got to spread the word, please. Just get a couple of more. Then I can afford more plants for when I do this nice decoration. See, no riffraff. So in the next episode, we shall be talking about The Wall, Alan Parker's The Wall, based on the Pink Floyd classic prog rock album. A very fantastic surrealist film, probably one of the best films regarding a certain act, a certain band. I love Purple Rain, for example, but I think it depends upon the day of the week, but The Wall probably beats it, just because it is so life affirming and also desolate, and it really makes you reflect upon yourself. I think Alan Parker, after hearing the Wall album, must have been totally inspired, as he was. Probably thought, I want visuals. I want to show the visuals that I can think of and what they can think of, and show it to everyone, because this is such a beautiful message, about life. Anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about because I haven't researched it yet, but I will, and we'll talk more next time. So if you haven't seen The Wall, I'd advise you to see it. Otherwise, you're going to go, "Why am I listening to this dickhead again, spoiling everything for me?" Yeah, I can only do so much. Bye-bye.
Oh, yeah, the costume.